I want to welcome you all, and I'm very pleased that you can be here because the census is very important. I would like to recognize Ron Garza, who's working diligently to make things happen, and of course he's our co-host for this entire event. I would also like to thank Sylvia Garza Perez and Myrna Leal from Brownsville CCC in Hidalgo County. Stand up, and Kimberly, where's Kimberly? So Sylvia, Myrna, and Kimberly were extraordinarily important in making this happen, and I personally thank you very, very much. I would like to recognize all of our elected officials who are here, because you are the people who are going to get the word out and help get this done. Would you raise your hand, all elected officials? If it happens, it's up to you. It's up to all of us. I'd like to recognize anyone who's on a CCC committee. Raise your hands. And you are the people out in the field who really are going to make it happen, and make sure that you see the census advocates. Raise your hand over there, census advocates. They have ideas from all of you that we can all use, and if you have an extra idea, make sure you get it to them. I would like to recognize our sponsors, and they really make it happen. The City of McAllen, we are very grateful to them for helping us to use this facility. Sam Garcia Architect, Rhodes Enterprise, Citizens Against Lawsuit Abuse, McAllen ISD with the translations, Frostbank, DHR Health, UTRGV, City of Los Fresnos, and we were so pleased that they came in, one of our smaller cities, and yet they're helping put this on. IBC Bank, DTM Realty Group, Clark Chevrolet, and Val Peason, Ernie Williams, Rio Bank, and McAllen EDC, McAllen Chamber of Commerce, Pathfinder Public Affairs, and the Brownsville Chamber of Commerce. And thank you very much. We couldn't have done it without you. And so with that, I would like to, Chief Victor.
Nandra, thank you. On behalf of the City of McAllen, Mayor Jim Darling and our City Commission, the mayor's at a different meeting right now. He's trying to get over here, but he wanted me to pass on to you how proud he is to have folks from Brownsville, Hidalgo County, and all 4 counties in McAllen here this evening on this very, very important topic. So on behalf of our Mayor Jim Darling and on behalf of our McAllen City Commission, welcome to the City of McAllen, and we hope that this is a productive night for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Sergio. Sergio is going to take over from now, and Sergio Contreras with Rio Grande Valley Partnership. So Sergio, you are on.
Thank you, Nedra. Round of applause for Nedra. Thank you for all that you do, Nedra. We'll begin the program, and I want to relate the message in the sense that was provided to us as for the purpose of being here today. The forum will inform and promote the importance of being counted and provide information on how to be sure that you, your family, and your neighbors get counted on April the 1st, 2020. The forum will stress the importance of being counted to our future and our children's future for representation, funding for schools, roads, health facilities, and economic opportunities. We hope to assure our people of the security and safety of being counted for the 2020 census. And I want to say thank you to Cameron County Judge Trevino, Cameron County Judge Cortez. Do we have Starr County or Willacy? Thank you for being here. Want to say thank you for your leadership as you've engaged your teams, your committees, and thank you for bringing your teams here as well. So as we begin the program, I am going to introduce our first speaker, Daniel Bishop Flores. On December 9th of 2009, Pope Benedict XVI appointed Bishop Flores as the 6th Bishop of Brownsville. He was installed on February 2010 at Basilica of Our Lady of San Juan del Valle, National Shrine, and thus became the 3rd native Texan to serve the Rio Grande Valley as bishop. And he will be presenting on also the purpose of and the importance of the census.
Muy bien, thank you. I guess I can stand right here, no? Thank you. First of all, I want to say I'm very happy to be here and very pleased to be able to participate in this very extensive effort to promote correct information about the census, but also to promote the full participation of the census here in the Rio Grande Valley. I have been the bishop of the Diocese of Brownsville for the last 10 years or so, and the diocese encompasses, of course, the 4 counties, Cameron, Willacy, Hidalgo, and Star, and I drive up and down the valley almost constantly. And I tell the bishops in the rest of the country, whether it's Chicago or New York or wherever else, or Los Angeles, donde quiera, I told them I am the luckiest bishop in the United States because I am in the Rio Grande Valley. And I really believe that because we have a very beautiful community. It's a community of many communities, of a great variety and of great richness culturally, but also of just a great sense of common purpose. And part of what we're doing here today is kind of promoting a common purpose in favor of promoting a common purpose, which is that we have an accurate count. Speakers after me, I'm sure, will be able to explain very clearly why it is, and you know yourselves, why the census is taken by the federal government every 10 years, the importance of those numbers for questions of like representation in Congress, for questions of redistricting, for questions of also of future planning, especially at the federal level, on the state level, on the local level, where we're going to put schools, where we're going to put hospitals, where we're going to put just the kind of services that people need. But in order that to happen, ustedes saben, no, we have to know quiénes somos y cuántos somos. Who are we and how many are we? And not just that, but also how old are we? How young are we? And what are the trends? And it's this sort of basic information, which of course the census has traditionally been involved with, and which is so important, and I want to just say this, why it's so important for here in the Valley. Ever since I've been here, people say, Bishop, of course, we're undercounted here in the Valley. Everybody says that, and just there may be lots of reasons historically for that, but I think we need to change that refrain so that we have as accurate as possible. Principally by getting the information to our communities. I, as the bishop, am particularly concerned about those areas outside the metropolitan areas, las colonias, where you have a lot of people who are very poor, who live in places that maybe don't even have an address, that we need to make as a community because we owe it to them to be counted and to make the effort that they get a chance. Because the numbers then kind of help us to kind of realize who we are. It's something also of a mirror back to ourselves to help us know who we are and what services we need, and also what we as a local community need to do to kind of do some of that outreach into some of those areas. So the extra effort that we're going to try to make, certainly on behalf of the church, I've been talking to the priests about this in the parishes for quite a while as to how we can get the information out and how we can facilitate reaching some of those areas that are not so easily reached. We need to let people know we're here. And I mean the rest of the country. I mean, they know that we're here, but the dimension and the richness and the reality of the numbers and the trends, our old folks and our young folks, who are the most likely not to be counted, that we're here, and that this is a part of kind of what the national responsibility, which is why we take the census anyways since 1790, so that we have a sense as to who's here. But we're here. Y estamos aquí nosotros, entonces, pues, ¿quiénes somos nosotros? We have to kind of get that word out, and that's why it's so important to make this effort. So I want to kind of emphasize that specific sort of effort that we make, so that we can kind of have an accurate sense as to where the growth is, for ourselves locally, so we can have a strong sense of what kind of needs we'd be planning for. I know this helps local communities, it helps local governments, it helps school districts, it helps law enforcement, it helps in terms of just where the services are that we need to be doing so we could continue to be a community that's kind of held together by a common bond and a common sense of helping each other along the way. And just to emphasize that we have a lot of people who are a little bit nervous about the census. I think we have to be honest about that. And we need to try to address that. And I'm very honest when I tell people, I tell them first, there is no citizenship question. This is very important. And I also say that the information is confidential. This is very important. And I don't care how many times we say it, we have to keep saying it. That it's confidential information, that by law, and there's certain important safeguards in protecting that confidentiality, that we get this information. We're not, so that we can have, who are we, where are we, how old are we, where do we come from, what are we trying, how do we form this community? And so it's those sorts of repeating over and over again, and we'll do our part as best we can in cooperation with so many other parts of the Valley and different organizations and community groups to kind of emphasize that it is confidential information, but it's vital that we all be counted. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Muy agradecido. Thank you.
Well, Bishop, you had 5 minutes to speak, and you left me with 1 second. That's great. We'll continue with the program. For those of you who have had the privilege of working with NEDRA, many times you sit back and kind of get a sense of those emails going back and forth, and then show up with a printed agenda and just move forward. So we'll continue with the program. With that said, we now have President and CEO of Rosa Mendoza with Alvanza, whom I just met. The mission for the organization is the advancement of the Latinx and underserved communities through education, advocacy, and other tangible actions to ensure success in our technology-driven world. Please help me welcome Ms. Mendoza.
Actually, just FYI, Alvanza is a combination of two words, the English word all and the Spanish word avanza, which means everybody moves forward with technology. That's where the name comes from, just FYI. Welcome, everyone. Buenas tardes. Thank you, Futuro RGB, Nidra and team, for inviting me to take part of this important dialogue about the census. As mentioned, my name is Rosa Mendoza, and I am the president and CEO of Alvanza. Alvanza is a nonpartisan, forward-thinking, policy and action nonprofit organization that advocates for the success of Latinos and other underserved communities, again, in our innovation and technology-based society. Let me start by asking you a question. What are some of the things that you consider important when you're looking for a new home? I'll answer that question. I'll tell you what things are important to me. My family and I recently moved to a new home, and you know what we looked for? We looked for places, homes that were close to good schools. I have a 2-year-old, and I want him to go to good schools because it matters. The middle school that he goes to, the elementary school, the high school that he goes to, needs to prepare my child well for when he goes to college, because he will go to college. But it matters a lot. We look for homes that were close to job opportunities, homes that were close to medical facilities, and homes that were close to things like grocery stores, restaurants, and of course, an area that had broadband access. But how is that all determined? Clearly, some areas are better connected and closer to resources than others, right? How does the builder decide where to start a new development? How do state and local areas decide where a school should be built? One data point used, not the only one, but a very important data point that is used is census data. Public and private entities are able to tap into census data for the purpose of planning deployment of services. And similar to what I just mentioned, another aspect that is perhaps overlooked to an extent is just getting a fair representation of the actual composition of the diverse population of people in the U.S., living in the U.S. It is vitally important that we understand and embrace the diversity of our beautiful nation. That the things produced by this nation are based on an accurately painted picture of our diversity. For these reasons and many others, it is crucial that everyone is counted during the census. And soon, the U.S. Census Bureau, as we all know, will begin collecting data about everyone living in the United States, regardless of citizenship and immigration status. So yes, we do need to keep that in mind. And it is crucial for everyone in the U.S. to know how to complete the census and to understand why it matters. Furthermore, obviously, with the census going online, it's another in a long list of reasons why underserved communities need to be counted and provided with equal broadband resources. And I have heard that this area is one of the areas that is not connected or least connected, and that is definitely very concerning. As mentioned, the census data collected is very, very important and is used for many purposes. It is used to determine the distribution of approximately $880 billion, billion with a B, by the way, to local communities that funds schools, housing, roads, and other public projects and community needs. We must ensure that these funds are dispersed in a fair and representative way. Anyone catch the last election? How about another reason why the census is so important is that it informs the number of congressional seats and electoral college votes for given areas. If underserved communities continue to be underrepresented communities, they will not have equal representation within our political process, and that's simply not democratic. We must ensure that our politicians understand the diverse makeup of their districts and work to provide representation that addresses the needs of underserved communities. And you know, all of us in this room, we get it, right? We understand why the census matter, and that's why we're here. We understand why it matters. We understand that we need to participate. But what about the people that are not in this room? How do we reach them? What do we do? And all of us can play a role in that, and we need to. All of us need to encourage everyone we know and tell them to encourage the people that they know to participate, because that's the only way we are going to be able to do it. And yes, we need to make sure they understand that their answers are confidential, that they're going to be okay, because I do understand the fears in our community, but we need to make sure they understand they're going to be okay, and you need to be counted in order for our community to get the resources that we all need, in order for our children to go to schools that have good resources. And we also want to encourage the Census Bureau to continue to spend the necessary time and resources to reach hard-to-count communities, which include children, homeless people, those with lower income and education, those who do not speak English as a first language, undocumented immigrants, and generally those in racial and ethnic minority communities. Given that these groups are less likely to be counted, it is imperative that the Census Bureau continue to work hard to reach these groups by any means at their disposal to ensure the most accurate possible census. And Alvanza stands ready to provide advice and guidance on how to reach these communities. As mentioned, the 2020 census will provide 3 main ways to provide responses. For the first time, people are going to be able to submit their responses online. They're also going to be able to call their responses via phone, and of course, the paper submissions are still going to be accepted. Now, why does it matter that the census is moving online? You know, it matters because, first of all, I'm sorry? Okay, so I got to be faster, but having access to broadband and obviously having the ability to conveniently complete the census online is just one of the many reasons why access and integration to broadband is very, very, very important. We cannot let access to broadband become a barrier to the completion of the census. And Alvanza is hopeful that the data collected by the census will help ensure that underserved communities are better served in the future. So that's why the census moving online is very, very important, because it continues a trend in recent years of public and private entities engaging consumers online. So whether it's college applications, job applications, or searching for a health care provider, a lot of the things that we take for granted on a daily basis are either impossible or very difficult without access to broadband. So without equal access to broadband across the country, we run a significant risk that large proportions of underserved communities would not be counted, and that would increase the number of hard-to-count communities. One of Alvanza's key policy priorities is to ensure that Latinos and all Americans have access to broadband, because without access to affordable, reliable broadband and internet connections on functional devices, Latinos and other underserved communities will continue to find themselves on the wrong side of the digital divide. And Alvanza stands ready to work with all of you in the McAllen community to learn about the needs regarding broadband and to look for ways to ensure that the right connections are in place so that the lack of broadband does not become a barrier in completing important things like the census. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Rose. And to provide us with direction as far as timing for Q&A as well. So our featured speaker will speak close to 20 minutes, followed by the panel that we have here that will also speak for about 20 minutes. That is the timing that was provided. So at this point in time, it is my pleasure to introduce Tim Olson, whom I had yes, who met with our team in Washington, D.C. In June. So thank you for that. For many of us that were there in D.C. as we advocated for the Valley, Tim was there, brought his team with us, and was able to provide us an update of what he will be speaking on here shortly. He currently serves as Associate Director for Field Operations with executive responsibility for data collection conducted by the U.S. Census Bureau for all surveys and censuses. Also began his career at the Census Bureau in 1987 as a temporary employee in the Seattle region during the 1990 and the 2000 census. He joined the Census Bureau headquarters team in 2001, supporting Field Division's Special Census Program, and in 2013 became the agency's first respondent advocate, and in 2015 became the Chief of Field Division. Olson is the recipient of numerous awards, including the Commerce Department's Gold and Silver Award, 2 Census Bureau Bronze Medal Awards, and the Director's Award for Innovation. Please help me welcome Mr. Tim Olson, all the way from D.C.
Thank you. You were awesome. Wow, what an introduction. Who was he talking about? Good evening, everybody. How are you? How are you? Awesome, awesome. It is such a pleasure to be here with you this evening. Just an absolute pleasure. And before I begin my comments, I want to just kind of self-disclose. In a lot of ways, being here in the Valley is for me coming home. My mom and dad lived here for, I think it was about 20 years. They were winter Texans from Minnesota, and they lived in Weslaco, right below the hospital, and spent a lot of years here. So I spent a lot of holidays here visiting them from when I was in college and grad school and so forth and so on. And also, this was the other crazy thing, my connection to the Valley, is my roommate in Washington, D.C. Is originally from Weslaco and graduated from Weslaco High School, I think in the 80s, somewhere in there. Family grew up, et cetera, et cetera. He joined the Air Force, went east, and I had the opportunity to host his mom in our place in D.C. many, many times. So when I come back to the Valley, I feel like I'm coming home. You know, family, friends, everybody's here. So thank you for having me. Tonight, I'm going to probably not use 20 minutes, and you may all applaud at that. Thank you. Yes. There's really 3 things that I want to share with you, and I'm trying to boil it down so it's people that are listening, maybe by media, etc., really can understand what we're talking about. The first thing I want to share is the 2020 census is one of the most important things each of us will do in the 2020 decade. Let me explain. As has been said earlier, the census determines how we are represented in the U.S. Congress, how each state is represented. What's also been mentioned, and I think bears repeating, is the census results determine how each state is represented in the Electoral College. So for the 2024 and the 2028 presidential election, the census in 2020 is going to determine, really in a very powerful way, how that Electoral College will be represented between the states and ultimately selecting the President of the United States. So you think about Congress, you think about the presidency, that's a big reason why census is important. And it's not just for a one-year election cycle, it's for a decade. It's literally for a decade. The second thing I want to share is that census is really one of the easiest things you can do in 2020. Easier than getting married, I think. Easier than not getting married. When we send out the invitations in mid-March, and here in the Valley, we will mail invitations to participate to people that live in the cities and towns. And in the rural areas of this valley, we will hand deliver questionnaire packages, particularly in the colonias, where the mailing addresses really don't jive well with the census process. We'll hand deliver through a census taker those questionnaire packages. And once everybody, each household has their forms or their invitations, the way they can respond in 2020 is so easy. They can either go online, they can go over the phone, or they can fill out the paper form that we have done since 1790. In the Valley, the form is going to be in English and Spanish. It's going to be a bilingual form. So whatever language somebody's most comfortable in, they can respond in. Also, if there's a household that is not English or Spanish speaking, but is in other languages, we will have online and phone responses in multiple languages available to those households. In addition to that, we will have language assistance guides in 59 languages available for people to understand how to complete the form. So all of this to say, when we deliver or mail those invitations this coming March, it is going to be so simple for people to respond. And that's a big deal for us at the Bureau. It makes it, I think, when you think of customer service and you think about making your processes relevant to the people that you're serving, the fact that we have moved beyond just paper only is really our way of being more relevant to the American people. So we're pretty excited about that. The third thing I want to mention today, and this has been said already tonight, but I think it bears repeating, is that participating in the census, it is safe and it is confidential. You know, by law and by oath, the Census Bureau cannot and will not share any personal information from individuals with any other entity, law enforcement, immigration, any other entity that would like to have that individual data for various reasons. We cannot share that. In fact, if I were to divulge this personal confidential information, my oath says if I divulge that, I face up to 5 years in prison and up to a $250,000 fine. And every other census employee takes the same oath. That oath is for life. It's not just a day or a week or a month or a year or a decade. It's for life. We take it seriously. I think in this environment and all of that's been spoken about in the last year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, many, many people throughout the nation are concerned about the census. They're concerned about the discussion previously of a citizenship question. We need to get the word out that census is safe, it's confidential, there is no citizenship question. And for each household, what's absolutely critical, because the census is safe, is that they include every breathing person that lives in their household, whether they are related, they are unrelated, whether they're a citizen, whether they are a non-citizen, whoever lives or sleeps most of the time in their household needs to be included in the count. So in closing, I have a couple of asks. Actually, I have 3 asks. So let me get right to it. My first ask is to please, and this is to all of you, please continue doing what you're doing to help getting the word out that census is important, it is easy, and it's really safe. They need to hear from you They need to hear from you about why they need to participate this coming spring. I was so pleased to hear from the bishop. The fact that you're going to have your leaders, your priests, sharing with their parishioners is so powerful. It's so absolutely powerful. So thank you. Thank you for that. For anybody involved in education, to have teachers that are in public school or private school working with young children, middle age, high school, to actually provide information to those students about the census and to send take-home materials home with them to their guardians or their parents saying, Mom, Dad, guardian, have you filled out the census? To do that is powerful. To all of you elected officials, God bless you. You know, you are out there standing, you're dealing with so many issues in your jobs as you represent the people that voted you into office. Census is maybe just one more thing on your plate. But I can tell from talking with you, I can tell from seeing you, I can tell from knowing what you're doing, it's not just one more thing that you're doing. You see it's going to be the next decade. And for you to get out there and to put that word, your stamp of approval on it, to everybody in your community, thank you so much. We need you to do that. So that's my first ask. My second ask is please continue helping us spread the word about temporary census jobs. Here in the Valley, and when I say the Valley, I'm thinking of the 4 counties that make up this area. We need to recruit a total of about 11,000 applicants for the several thousand temporary positions. Right now, I think we are at about 7,000 applicants. And before you think, oh, we're way behind, you're actually farther ahead than most areas in the country. So you ought to give yourselves a hand for that, okay? You actually, percentage-wise of the full goal, you're farther ahead than most areas in the country, which is really cool. Again, I want to package up what you're doing and spread it around the country like gold dust. But we still need about 4,000 to 5,000 applicants, people that will apply for these jobs. The pay rate is pretty good. It's $19 an hour here in Hidalgo County. It's $18.50 an hour in the other counties that are making up this Rio Grande Valley. We are seeking people to go online right now to apply and to consider these temporary jobs. Job offers will begin in January and February of this coming year. Whoever's selected will go through an onboarding process, and then they'll go through a training process, and they'll actually start the field work, following up with households that haven't self-responded end of April, May, June, and early July. So we'd like to think, you know, since this is next spring, it is next spring, but in order for us to hire that many people, we need folks to apply right now to get them in the pipeline so that we can effectively have enough people on board that can conduct the census. My final, it's not really an ask, it's just a big thank you. I think I said it in my opening, in the reception we had earlier, but I'll say it. I guess this is more of a public environment than the reception we had before tonight's event. I want to thank you folks. What you're doing here in the Valley, from my vantage point, and I've got the entire nation with responsibilities. When I look at what you're doing here in the Valley, it's amazing. It's beautiful. It's inspiring, and it's motivating. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank you for what you're doing. And just to give you some encouragement, keep doing it. Keep doing it. Census is coming up literally a matter of days from now. I believe as we share with everyone that we are connected with, that we have within our sphere of influence, that census is important, it's easy, and it's safe. I believe that there will be a great count, an accurate count of all people living here in the Rio Grande Valley in 2020. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. So it says here 20 minutes plus. You finished at 13. You can count them. All right. Let's hear it. Bishop. Well, we also want to thank all the informational booths that we have around here. I'm already going home a hero. I was walking away and I picked up one of these for my little man, but then I make sure I counted and I picked one for my daughter as well. And then also to Ron's team at the COG, though they've got some really neat binders, so the wife is getting one as well. Thank you for being here. We'll go ahead and begin with the panel. The Advocates Idea 2. I think that's what I heard. So we have our panelists here today, and I will briefly introduce each one. Then we will dive into a question that I will pose to each. Veronica Gonzalez took office as state representative in 2005, serving as chair of critical committees, and then moved on to manage her law practice. Veronica Gonzalez is now the vice president for governmental and community relations at UTRGV. Thank you for being here, Veronica. Christina Patino-Howell is the network weaver for the Rio Grande Valley Equal Voice Network. The RGV EVN is a coalition of 9 nonprofits working to advance equity and immigrant rights in the region since 2009. Thank you for being with us. Ron Garza is a triathlete. No, that's not. Ron Garza is the executive director at the Lower Rio Grande Development Council, focusing in the region's community and economic development arena, as well as health and human services, public safety, and transportation. The LRGVDC plays a vital role in implementing specific functions as designations directed by the local, state, and federal agencies, which include serving as the region's economic development district as designated by the U.S. Department of Commerce, the EDA, which is impacted by the U.S. Census as well. So the first question that I have is being presented to Veronica Gonzalez. The goal of the census is to count every person living in the United States once and only once and in the right place. Aside from the U.S. Constitution requiring that each decade we take a count or a census of the America's population, why is it so important that everyone responds to the census?
Well, thank you for the question, Sergio. And let me give a special thank to Mr. Olson and Ms. Mendoza for coming down from Washington, D.C., for this special visit to the Rio Grande Valley. We appreciate the interest that is coming from all across the nation, and especially here in the Valley, and I'm glad to see so many people that have also turned out tonight. So thank you all for being here. Good evening, everyone. And Sergio, that's a real important question, and I know that a lot of people have answered it here tonight, but I think the reason we've talked about the census so much and that we will continue to talk about it ad nauseum, I bet, is because we only do this once every 10 years, every decade, so we've got to get it right. We know that we were undercounted last time, and we know that we were severely undercounted, and this is an area of the state and of the country that is growing so very much. We all see it. I mean, when you drove here, you probably thought, my gosh, look at this traffic, that we've got. And if we're going to be able to keep up with that growth, the money matters. And so it's going to be very important that we get our fair share of the funding. I heard tonight a figure of 800+ billion, and I know that prior data showed like at least 675 billion in annual funds being distributed according to the census. So it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money across the nation, and we want to make sure we get our fair share. So I think what's important when we're speaking to people is that we're able to put it in real life terms about how the census affects us. It affects you whether you're an infant or whether you're an elderly person. From the birth to death, the census affects you. Because if you think about it, if you're an infant and your family relies on the WIC program, the Women, Infant, and Children's Program, the census impacts you. If you're in school and you're in the K through 12 system, you're a student, the lunch program, the breakfast program, the youth after-school activities, career technical education, all of those things are determined. How much money they get is determined by the census count. If you are a college student, and I work at the university, and I see how many of our students need financial aid. Well, the financial aid, how much is going to be available to us, whether it's a loan or a grant, a Pell Grant, will depend on, again, the census count. If you're a single mother, let's say you have a child that is on Medicaid or CHIP, the Children's Health Insurance Program, or you are receiving food stamps, which is now known as SNAP, or you live in public housing, all of those things are funded by monies that we receive based on the count. If you are not, let's say, I don't have a kid in school, I don't have a young adult in college, I am not on social services. Well, but you drive the streets, you drive the roads, the highways, or somebody drives you. Well, and if I drove from Edinburgh here, the traffic is crazy, right? And all the construction that's going on. We need that federal funding, those dollars for transportation. And so the planning and the funding for transportation determined by census. If you are elderly over 65, and in my book, 65 is not old at all, but if you're over 65 and you're eligible for Medicare or an adult food program, we always see the Amigos del Valle and others that get to receive the food. Again, the census will determine how much funding that they receive. And for those of us living on the border where border security is discussed all the time, well, Homeland Security, how much money we get for Homeland Security, determined by the census. And as was mentioned earlier tonight, businesses use it in their planning. If you want to locate your business here, let's hope we bring great jobs here, high-paying jobs here, tech industry and others that are starting to locate. Well, when they see that you've got a lot of young people, a lot of young talent living in an area, and they use the census data to determine that, they will want to move into our area. So all of these things are very important. Let's make sure that our dollars are keeping up with who we are and what we are and our growth here in the Rio Grande Valley. So let's get everyone counted.
Thank you, Veronica. I do want to recognize the office of Senator John Cornyn and Representative Henry Cuellar, whom I saw in the audience. Thank you for being with us. For Bishop Flores, conducting the census is a massive undertaking. Do you have to be affiliated with a governmental agency, an organization, or be a community leader to get involved in the efforts?
No. The important question here, the important point is that it is a massive effort, and the calling of people out forwards to step forward and take responsibility is something that anyone can get involved with. And it also depends on how you define a community leader. When I think of a community leader, I think of families that I visit in far western Hidalgo County, in Pueblo de Palmas y El Flaco, no? Where the community leader is the grandmother who has the 7 kids who are in the house. And if you can convince her that it's a good idea to fill out the census, you convince the neighborhood. This is very important, because sometimes we think that through our social media and through our usual communication channels, that's going to be enough to get the count. But you see, the valley, as you know, has many dynamics within it, and that we don't want to simply say leaders or people who like do the interviews like I just did, but the leaders are the ones who are in the local community, and we really need to reach them and encourage them and convince them that why it's important and that it is a responsibility that impacts their children and their grandchildren in terms of the kinds of things. And it's that basic kind of human information that we can give to people who are in fact the principal leaders in a lot of ways of a community, because a community is different than a bunch of houses in a neighborhood. Me explico? A community is different than a bunch of houses in a neighborhood. And it's kind of who can help get that word there, who has credibility. And so I would just encourage, it is a massive effort, but we need to kind of really make the effort to get to those ways of communication that are more sort of traditional in the way the Valley works. It is a lot about who said it and how they explained it and kind of encourage other people to take part. And so I just think because it is such a massive effort, we need to use everything we can, social media and media sort of ways of getting out to people and organizations and things like that that have a voice. And we also have to be very bilingual in this. Because my suspicion is, but I'm not an expert on statistics, my suspicion on this is that, you tell me if I'm wrong, but is that when we're undercounted in Spanish. That's my suspicion. Maybe the census will bear out a different story there, but I think we have to get to the grandmothers and the grandkids and the ones who are in the neighborhoods in Pueblo de Palmas y El Flaco y San Carlos y otras partes como así, ¿no? Okay.
Thank you, Bishop. For Ron Garza, speaking at the regional level with multiple efforts, can you share some additional specific efforts the region has embarked on attempting to engage the community and obtain a more accurate census count?
Thank you, Sergio. Good evening, everybody. And yeah, I guess to use an analogy of a marathon race, this has been a marathon. You know, even though the window is so short to actually respond to the census, here in the region, we've been at it for over 2 years. This has probably been one of the greatest displays of elected official leadership that we've had in a very, very long time. You know, we should applaud all the efforts, you know, Judge Cortez, Judge Trevino, very many mayors across the region have made it a priority. Being proactive in anything in life in general is really tough. If it's, you know, preventive maintenance on your vehicle or eating more healthy or whatever it is. So this endeavor is really tough because this is not an instant gratification project. This is something that we all know hits us over time and hits us hard. So to make this a community priority is really difficult. It's been really difficult. There's been a lot of technical aspects to this, from getting addresses verified, from identifying census tracts that have embedded housing units, that have garage apartments, that, you know, from the complete count committee structure. That's a lot of effort. There's been a lot of, from the counties that are larger to the counties that are smaller, everybody had to kind of navigate their way through developing what works for their own jurisdiction. So it's been difficult, but again, should be something really proud of. I know back in October of 2017, Congressman Gonzalez, he advocated directly with a letter to have a census office in the Rio Grande Valley that had never happened before. And luckily that advocacy worked, because for the first time we have a locally based office here. And I think that in itself, the presence of the support from U.S. Census Bureau really helped invigorate our own efforts here. I think we got the message early too. You know, about 2017, U.S. Census Bureau started to come down, started to really kind of help develop this sense of urgency. And our local elected officials, especially the chief elected officials, the mayors of the large cities, our county judges, really took it upon themselves to champion this effort. Last April 1st of 2019 was a very special day in the Rio Grande Valley, because that was a 1 year and counting day. And again, we coordinated really well that the Hidalgo County and Stark County event that was held in Edinburgh was at 10 a.m. And then we went to Cameron County, and Willisey County joined us at, I think it was 2 p.m. And we saw elected officials and leaders from all across the region come together. So it's really kind of been a great display of this community. You know, we're fairly competitive in the Rio Grande Valley, but the greatest thing about this endeavor is that we should tap into that competitive spirit. Because in this game, in this endeavor, I think we all win being competitive, because we're all going to win in the long run. So I think, you know, we've been talking about it so long, is that one fear that we got to worry about is this fatigue of this discussion. And again, we're back to kind of a marathon analogy. We're just about to hit the wall. We're hitting mile 20, so this is the really peak of when it gets tough. But, you know, we got to, you know, regroup. We got to get our efforts really calculated back together, because that window of May and April is going to be so specific and so important that we got to make sure we have our best effort at that time.
Thank you, Ron. And as we all know, April 1st is right around the corner. Commissioner Cowan, can you believe it's already Thanksgiving next week? Got to get ready for both. The following question is for Christina, and the question is it easy to respond to the 2020 census, and how safe and secure will the information being provided be?
Thank you. Well, I just want to start by saying that historically it has not been easy for us. So when we had census here 10 years ago, we had a number of problems, and our region is also historically hard to count. And I think it's very important to recognize those obstacles when we come into the 2020 census, that this is not something that is easy or has been easy for us, so we're going to need to work harder. The good news is that we have a lot of resources here. We have a legacy of community engagement. We have a legacy of people who trust the community and who trust and who've worked so long to build this trust, and also who have spent decades fighting for their community. As a number of people have spoken to already on the panel, as a result of the advocacy that a number of different organizations have put in over the last 10 years, we've seen great changes that are setting us up for better success in 2020, but that is not going to be enough. We're still going to need to be on the ground. So one of the things that the Equal Voice Network has done that I'm really excited about is that we've made, and we're continuing to work to make Census fun. So what is fun is easy. So we've been thinking a lot about how can we make the census more fun. We've been bringing musicians to our census community events. We've had art activities at these events. We've made it so that people want to come, they want to celebrate their culture, they want to celebrate one another, they want to celebrate being counted, because really the census is one of the most poetic things that we do as a nation. It's a time when we say, everyone matters. Every single body in this nation matters, and that's really important. And I wish we had more opportunities for us to do this all together as a nation in other things that we funded federally. But for the time being, this is the moment, this is the poetic moment when we come together as a decade and we say every single being should be counted. Every single being needs to be recognized. And that is something that we should take pride in, because we have not always been counted. We have not always been recognized. Our region has been historically underrepresented. Our region has been systematically excluded. And so it's very important that we take the resources that we have right now and that we do absolutely everything we can with them to make it easy, or as easy as we can, for the community members who, as the bishop was saying, are the ones who maybe it's not so easy for.
Thank you, Christina. On July 2nd, the U.S. Census Bureau initiated printing the 2020 questionnaires without a citizenship question. Responses to the 2020 census are safe, secure, and required by federal law to be kept secretly and confidential. We can constantly say all of this, but even after the people hear it over and over, Bishop Flores, is it safe to say that the people of the area will feel comfortable responding to the census?
If we keep assuring people of the fact that the question is not on the census questionnaire, and do so in a way that kind of reemphasizes in the various places and parts of our community. I think the message has gotten through to a certain part, but a lot of people still, asked me yesterday, is the question there? And that means the message has not gotten where it needs to be. And that will be an inhibitor. I'm not a lawyer, so I didn't catch all of the legal arguments that went even to the Supreme Court, but I do know this, that had the question been there, it would have intimidated people and would have complicated things immensely. Now to kind of lay fears aside and say, no se preocupen, that intimidation is not there, but the message, there was so much media attention on the question in the first place, which now is not the question on the document, that we have to in some way get the word, and we have to just keep repeating it. Wherever we happen to be. When you get asked, I get asked, we just need to keep saying it, and also the confidentiality of the information. They ask the U.S. Bishops' Conference every 10 years to kind of make a statement on behalf, endorsing the confidentiality of the census of the Bishops' Conference, and but we also have said to the government, the one time this is not observed, we've all lost credibility. So we have confidence in it. We need to keep saying that. And this is very important. It's just something we have, but the community is nervous. We know this, and because the message hasn't gotten through. Let's just be realistic.
Thank you,
Keep
Bishop.
saying it.
Ms. Gonzalez, why do you think that the RGV has experienced severe undercounts in the past?
Well, we've heard everybody speaking of this all night, and I think, there is no single cause, and so there's no single solution for this. There's a lot of causes, and one is the question of whether people trust that their information is not going to be revealed to anyone else, and that's, I don't know that we can drive that home enough. And I think people trust the messenger, right? So you got to get the right messengers giving the message. We have to all put the message out, but then again, it has to be the people that they most trust so that they do that. That's one reason why. But there's others. People that are hard to reach in terms of where they live, if the rural routes and renters have been shown to be undercounted. Non-English speakers, low-income individuals. Children, there's quite a few reasons for why. What we know here in the Rio Grande Valley is that we were undercounted. We know that the reality doesn't match the numbers that we saw last time. And I think there's also complexity in households that a lot of times, like you may have 3 generations, and that's not uncommon at all here in the Rio Grande Valley, that you have 3 generations living in one home. And then someone will say, well, I have to count me and my immediate children. But no, you have to count everyone living in the home. If it's a grandparent, if it's a relative that is staying with you, like my niece lives with us, we count her because she lives with us here. College students, I know there's been confusion about, well, what about, do their parents count them? Or do they count themselves if, let's say, they're living in a dorm here? Well, it's where you live most of the year. It's where you sleep most of the year, right? A baby that's born, you take them home on April 1st, hey, the baby's home on April 1st, that baby gets counted. We have to get that message out to people, and really, I guess as Ron was mentioning, a lot of educating, a lot of maybe the frequently asked questions. We have to think ahead and anticipate what people are going to ask and make sure that we have the information to be able to provide it to them. We also have to allow access. So many people here in the Rio Grande Valley still do not have internet access, and this is a time that we're going to be allowed to do this online. So I know, like for us at the university, it's very important that most of the kids all have a phone, right? But we want to make computers available because they can then sign up for their entire family, and they can have all of their family members count, and if their family lives in an area that is hard to count normally, their students can do it for them. And I know the schools and all these complete count committees that we're all serving on have been working very hard on a plan, on a strategic plan on how we are going to do this so that we get everyone counted. I failed to mention earlier about the importance also of the congressional seats, the congressional representation, and I wanted to point that out again. I know that when you start talking about drawing lines and redistricting and congressional representation, people's eyes glaze over, but it is so critical. And I know from my prior experience in having served in the Texas House and seen how they redraw the lines and what gets played with and how the population, they call it packing and cracking, but it is so critical. We want to have as much representation as we can. The more representation we have, the larger our voice. So I think that's also going to be critical. But let's get everybody access. Let's anticipate questions, and then let's have answers for people, and let's make sure that we are the messengers to those that trust us.
Thank you, Veronica. I'm going to skip around here a little bit. We have 2 more questions here, and then we'll open it up for the audiences. Related to recruitment of census workers, Christina, what can we do now to begin making the people feel at ease about a census worker visiting them to remind them about completing their census form?
Well, the complete count committees are incredibly important because that's really where we're going to be reaching into so many different sectors of our region to make sure that we're having that community engagement happen before the census knocker gets to their door. This is especially important we have in Hidalgo County and Cameron County, we have over 30 census tracts that didn't reach 70% of census response in the 2010 census. So that means that the and some of these census tract regions were below 50%. So huge amounts of our counties are not being counted, and that means that in those counties in particular, or excuse me, in those census tract regions in particular, we need to be focused on making sure that people understand what the census is, that they are anticipating the census, because these are also the regions where the door knockers are going to come. These are most likely the people who are not going to receive anything in the mail because they have a P.O. box. And so probably the only time that they're going to hear about it, unless they hear about it from a friend first, unless they hear about it from a trusted business or from a community service place where they go, then the first time they're going to hear about it is from someone knocking at their door, and that's not ideal. We really want them to know and hear about it first from us, so that when someone comes to their door, they can trust that person, they're expecting that person, and they know that they can speak to that person in confidence.
Last question that I have here is for Ron Garza, and it leads us to open the questions after this. As the date grows closer to what messaging would you give the community in response to the census activities?
I think the biggest message is know your dates of importance and tailor your message, which I think we're doing a tremendous, great job here in the Rio Grande Valley. Again, from counties and cities tailoring their own logos, to the city of McAllen's float that's outside, to the city of Harlingen is going to do a concert that day. I mean, those ideas are just great because March 12th, important date. March 12th is the first day you can self-respond. April 1st, obviously, is an extremely important date because April 1st is Census Day. By that point, everybody that's going to be mailed an information packet has your information packet. So the month of April is going to be absolutely key because the more we can be proactive and self-respond, we're already going to stay ahead of the curve. We don't have to wait for somebody to knock on our door. We don't have to wait for all those maybe unintended consequences there. We can pick up our phone and in 10 minutes, self-respond to ourselves. So keep on doing what you're doing. I think everybody's just attendance today shows that you're ambassadors. Help spread those words. Use every part of the community that you can. Your community members, churches, social media, those chismosas and chismosas, use everybody to help spread this message because it's very important. If we can get this to spread, the census isn't the most appealing thing in the world, but if we can get this to spread with the importance that, our local gossip does, then we're ahead of the curve. So use every method you can and spread it out and keep the month of April in your sights.
Thank you, Ron. I'll now extend the invite to join the conversation to Tim and to Rosa as we open it up for the audience. And as you begin to think of your question, I want to say thank you for being with us here on a Monday night. We understand that there's Monday night football. Being that the Cowboys are not playing, it's really not relevant, right? So we're good. So I do have the mic that I can pass on and walk around with it. Judge, do you have one, Judge? Okay. It's okay. I need to work out my lunch.
I believe there's 10 questions that are being asked, and I think it's important for everybody to know that you don't have to answer all 10 questions. Can we have the proper answer as to how many of the 10 questions must you answer for it to be useful? If what I said is true.
Yeah. What's important is that each question on the form, everybody complete all of them. I can't give you a specific set of questions that. I'll repeat. We want everyone to complete all of the questions on the form. Ultimately, and I will say this, obviously not everybody completes all the questions, right?
And
We will
those
take the
individuals
very
that
best
don't-
we can get.
Those individuals that obviously don't complete all the questions, are those counted?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
En español.
Aquí todos hablamos español.
Perdón, mi nombre es Gloria Moreno, Tengo 35 años como líder. Vivo en Brownsville, Texas, en Cameron Park. Cameron Park, cuando yo llegué hace 40 años, éramos 300 residentes. Ahorita somos como 8,000. Hemos luchado todos estos años para que Cameron Park sea contado y hemos obtenido todas las ayudas que Cameron Park ha necesitado: agua, drenaje, pavimento, vivienda, salud, préstamos, ayudas, o sea, todo hemos obtenido. Pero yo he visto otras comunidades que están del límite de Brownsville a Los Fresnos, a 10 millas. Sí, entonces a 10 millas, donde no hay agua, no hay luz, no hay caminos, menos censo. Entonces es importante que las personas tengamos conciencia que no nomás la ciudad. Hay personas alejadas de la ciudad, donde ni siquiera se ven porque están tapadas por árboles, montes. Yo he ido a esas comunidades y la gente me ha dicho que tiene 70 años sin agua. Gracias.
Bueno, señor,
Question.
eso es tan importante, permíteme, porque es tan importante asegurarse que esa gente participe, porque esa gente tiene que entender. Mucha gente en nuestra comunidad no participa porque dicen, es que estoy ocupado. Y sí están ocupados, tienen muchas cosas que hacer y para ellos esto es como, no entienden la importancia porque el impacto no es de ahora, no les impacta hoy ni mañana y muchas veces no entienden la importancia y líderes como usted tienen que ir a las comunidades y decirle, te impacta de esta manera, así como lo han explicado todos, te impacta a los niños de esta manera, a los otros de esta manera, de tu salud de esta manera, tiene que explicarle con lujo de detalles de cómo les impacta hoy y mañana, de cómo les impacta absolutamente a todos bueno, participen en el censo para que traigan a esta comunidad, porque de esa forma vamos a recibir los recursos que necesitamos. Entonces tiene que hacerlo usted, tiene que aliarse con otros líderes de la comunidad para explicarles del por qué tienen que participar.
Good afternoon. My name is Jerome Garza. First, I want to thank the mayor and the city of McAllen. Every time I come to this area and I walk into a city facility, I see a public service announcement for the census. So I just want to say thank you. My question is first to the bishop, then to Ron, then Veronica, then Christina, and then Rosa. Will you perform a public service announcement for Census 2020? Bishop.
I think it's all yes.
Will. Yeah. Sure, we'll do that. In fact, we've already kind of started trying to organize that with our communications people. Yeah, I'll do that happily.
Question in the back?
Oh, I haven't answered yet.
Oh.
I will do it, but I would say also I'd like to make sure that some of our community leaders are featured, like this woman from Cameron Park who came and many of the other community organizations that come with us.
I'd be happy to. I'm not from the area, but happy to help in whatever way I can.
Thank you.
Good evening. Yes, my name is Roy Lamont. I am an Iraq-Afghan veteran and locals veterans advocate. My thing is that I think the census also would count how many veterans we have here in the Valley. I know a lot of veterans go to school at UTRDV, but my question is to Mr. Olson. You said that you needed to hire some workers for the census. Have you thought about going to the local VFWs or the American Legions? I know that pretty soon the census might have a presentation at the next district meeting for the VFW, which runs from South Padre Island to Laredo. So have you thought about maybe going to the local posts?
Excellent question. We'll buy the donuts, we'll buy the partnership, we'll buy whatever we need to.
That's a great question, and I know that we are seeking out people of all backgrounds to be employed, including veterans. And so I'm going to ask our local people here with Census to make that connection with you after the meeting so that we can actually get somebody there to facilitate what you've suggested as far as the VFWs. Thank you.
One more question?
Good evening, Jesus Roberto. Question that I have, I know you're doing a lot of great outreach and the digital divide was brought to our attention. Is there like a mobile unit we can take to the colonias that had a hot spot, we can have event and coordinate it with doing the online census? Something to that effect, that was my question.
I think there are a number of municipalities that are working to develop something like that. Some of the nonprofits that I work with through the Equal Voice Network are doing programs in, sorry, I think you're getting two answers at the same time.
No, you're okay.
So what we'll be doing as part of the Equal Voice Network is going to a number of different colonias with hotspots and tablets and phones in the regions that don't have access to Wi-Fi so that they can participate as well.
Any other question?
Dr. Rodriguez, I was just going to mention, I know the School of Medicine at the university has a mobile van, Unimobil, and it goes into a lot of the underrepresented areas to provide health care. And so I think we can work on that to have also census information. They can go ahead and fill out the census while they're there. And I know that not only does the university have a mobile van, but I know hospitals do as well. There's several that go all around the parts of the county that are the most difficult to reach, I think, at times. So I think that there can be a good concerted effort to do that as well.
Thank you. Well, before we conclude, I do want to say thank you to our sponsors, and that is, again, to the City of McAllen. Thank you for hosting us here today. Sam Garcia Architect, Rhodes Enterprises, Citizens Against Lawsuit Abuse, McAllen ISD, Frost Bank, DHR Health, UTRGV, City of Los Fresnos, IBC Bank, DTM Realty Group, Clark Chevrolet, Val Pison, LNF Distributors, Ernie Williams, Rio Bank, McAllen ADC, McAllen Chamber, Pathfinder Public Affairs, Brownsville Chamber of Commerce, Code RGV, Copy Zone, Valley Mail Service, and Rio Grande Guardian. And I also see some of our friends from Brownsville and from Harlingen. Be safe. Thank you for joining us here in McAllen. Y'all have a great evening.